In 1800, Jacob Hoover, through his son David, purchased 2,500 acres of land along Lake Erie. The area was known only as Stony Creek, or Walpole by the locals. In 1802, the first mill was built on Stony Creek by Jesse Hoover. It was known as Hoover Mill. The Steele and Evans families were among those taking up land alongside the Hoovers. Thinking that the crossroads was a good place for a village in 1826, William Steele and his wife Susanna bought land from David Hoover and gave the little community the name of Williamsville after himself. In 1833, the local settlers cut a road through their woods, and soon after a mail service was expanded from Dunnville to Victoria with John Evans, who was employed as a mail courier. It was a 3-day road trip and made it necessary that the little hamlet now have an official name. Selkirk was chosen. Home to a working 1896 drilling rig, the Canadian Drilling Rig Museum stands as a reminder of the importance of natural gas in Haldimand.
The process of this is just impact drilling. And the bit, there's one laying there on the floor. You can see how it's sharpened and everything else, but they just go in there and they just chisel rock.
You get drilling in the flint here, like we're in here now, maybe every 20 minutes. You got to take that bit off, sharpen it all up, because it wears the side right off of it.
When the gas well was drilled, you had to get your pipeline from the well to the main line along the roads.
We're done with this well, we're going to move to the next one, so we call in all the teamsters, which could be a dozen guys with a dozen teams or whatever we think we need. And they hook onto the tower, take it away to the next location. The days of the tool dresser is long gone, he's history.
The early heritage of the natural gas discovery was in this area. The early history goes back to, in 1866, John Carmody found natural gas while looking for oil in the Port Colborne area. They realized this area was very rich in natural gas. One newspaper issue claimed that people were awakened from their beds in order to, farmers were awakened from their beds in order to sign leases for their property. Gas was so rich in this area. There were probably 500 companies formed by the 1920s. If you look out in the fields, you'll see the pump jacks working, or perhaps just a static figure out there in the field, but it represents that there was a very significant heritage here at one time.
When the plowing match came to this township, we had to have something to do for our area, so we found our drilling rig. Originally, it was owned by a contractor in this immediate area. When we found it, all the iron was available, so we trucked everything back to Raynham Center, reassembled it. We moved it to the plowing match, and after the plowing match, what are we going to do? What we came up with was to start a museum.
The main centerpiece of the museum is the historic working 100-year-old drilling rig. Around it we have 3 exhibit buildings holding various archives and artifacts. I think many people don't realize that natural gas is a significant part of our heritage. That's something that many people need to know, and the story needs to be told.
Selkirk's Cottonwood is a restored Italianate red brick mansion built in 1870 by William Holmes. The mansion is currently a living museum.
We are at Cottonwood Mansion, which is a restored mansion. The mansion was built in 1865 to 1870. We're not exactly sure of the year. It was built by William Holmes. He met Mary Hoover, who was of the Hoover families who settled along Lake Erie shore, and we have the marriage certificate written on an envelope by the Justice of Peace in Buffalo, so we suspect that they probably eloped. He was a land speculator. He bought and sold property, and this This property had tall pine trees on it. It was called masting land. The pine trees were used for masts for the sailing ships. The restoration itself was a dream of Larry Hamilton, who was a descendant of, or is a descendant of the Hoover family. And it was mainly carried on by volunteers. A tremendous amount of volunteer labor went into restoring it. The interior had to be completely redone. The woodwork is as it was then. It's red pine with a faux finish on it. As you come through the front door, the room on your left is the Smith parlor, and it is furnished mainly by artifacts that are original to the mansion. The music room has a bay window. It is set up as a living museum where people can touch, look, wander around, learn a little bit about maybe their own family, or maybe just about how life was at that time. Bring children in, let the children see how life was.
Once fertile farmland, Selkirk Provincial Park is working to preserve the natural heritage of Haldimand.
This was a private property that was actually farmed by a family by the name of Wheeler, and the property had been in their name for some time, dating back into the early 1900s, approximately 1910, 1915, when they first settled on this piece of property. And it was farmed until, as I said, until the mid-60s, when the family finally sold the property to the Ontario government. Well, Selkirk Provincial Park actually began as a provincial park in 1968. It was a part of an initiative by the Ontario government during which really started in the 1950s and carried through the 1970s, to create a system of provincial parks in order to offer a greater public recreational opportunities and access to public or to bodies of water such as Lake Erie. I always viewed Selkirk as sort of a quiet sort of place of retreat for a lot of folks. It offers a very quiet setting for both camping, for picnicking opportunities, or spending a day by the lake. There's a very nice trail called the Wheelers Walk Trail in the park. As with most provincial parks, I think Selkirk has a few regionally or locally significant plant species which are protected. It also offers at the north end of the park a nice little forest of shagbark hickory, which is somewhat unique to the area. I think the park will always have a role to play, both in the provincial picture of recreational opportunities as well as for the county of Haldimand. It provides also a valuable role in terms of local tourism for both the businesses in the area and as well for the citizens of Haldimand County.
The Wilson McDonald Memorial School Museum is a fully restored one-room schoolhouse from the 1920s.
This is a living artifact. We're very, very fortunate to have it as a living site. The Wilson McDonald Museum was in existence from 1872 to 1965. In 1872 it was opened as a museum, and it had classes from grade 1 to grade 8. The children then were bused into central schools like Walpole South, Walpole North. In the late 50s, early 60s, a lot of the one-room schoolhouses in the area closed down. When this schoolhouse closed down, everything that you see in here was auctioned off in 1965. In 1967, it reopened as a museum, with Reverend Earl and Elsie Sider being the first curators and founders of the museum. The museum itself presently is opened for educational programs.
The kids come in for the day and basically role play, pretend that they are children in a one-room school in the year 1925, and in the morning especially, we try to run the program like a regular day would have been in a one-room school. I love history, so especially when the kids come dressed in costume, there is nothing better than to look through these old windows and see the schoolyard filled with kids in period costume. It really does feel like, I tell them they're doing time travel, and at that moment it really does feel like we've gone back to 1925.
Being a student here was quite a bit of fun because everyone came locally, so you knew everyone, and we all had brothers and sisters in the same classroom, which students today don't always have. When I came to school here, our school population was always quite high, 40 to 50 students, and it was very difficult to be a teacher. And quite often our teachers only lasted 1 year. Students of the museum's time were faced with a whole different set of problems in terms of books, pencils, paper, and that sort of thing. And hopefully the idea of it is to just expose rural schools to as many kids as possible, and hopefully they take home something with them and tell their parents and have it as a memory that will keep the museum going.
I think one thing I want to see is classes come in on a regular basis, a more regular basis, expand our program, have classes come in throughout the year if possible, and to go and have it that people can come in and do hands-on activities.
It's just so neat. There are still lots, I call them hidden treasures, because many of the one-room schools that are still here are changed into something else, and so the kids can drive through Haldeman and pick out the one-room schools and remember their history and know what they used to be important for.